When was the last time you stopped to think about how important translations are for studying the Bible? Take a look for just a second at these two different passages, Galatians 3, 6 through 9 in the NRSV and in the New Living Translation. I highlighted all the places where the translations are slightly different. And this is a really helpful exercise because you can see that the New Living Translation takes more words to say the same thing that the NRSV does. In some ways, the NLT seems to make more sense. At least it uses less technical language. And so when you compare these two, though, you can sort of get a sense that there's something going on with the different translations. Today we're going to talk about why translations matter and three things you should keep in mind about your translations. Hey, welcome to a Bible study tip by My Bible School. My name's Tyler, and I love to help people study the Bible and engage their faith. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about three things that you need to know about Bible translations and keep in mind when you're reading or studying the Bible. So, if you're like most people, you're comfortable with one translation of the Bible. Maybe you have that go-to Bible sitting on the coffee table in your house, and you pick it up and you've been reading it for years and you love it, and that's a fantastic thing. But when was the last time you stopped to consider how important that translation is for understanding the Bible, and how important it is to recognize that there are other translations? Most of the time, people forget that their Bibles are, in fact, translations. And so they get so used to a particular way of their Bible saying certain things that they associate God's Word with the specific English translation that they're comfortable with. So it's much more complicated than that, though. We need to remember that, in fact, every translation is exactly that, a translation of something else. So according to the super reliable research tool Wikipedia, there have been at least 100 English translations of the Bible, and that doesn't even take into account all the countless translations of the Bible into other languages. So now, having translations, it should be clear, is a wonderful gift, and we should be so thankful for all of the people that do translational work to get the Bible into a language that we can understand, so that everyone doesn't have to study biblical languages in order to read the Bible. So it's really important. But if we can keep a few things in mind about translations, it'll help us study the Bible even better. So the first thing to keep in mind about translations is that translations are based on the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek texts of the Bible. Right? So the Old Testament was primarily written in Hebrew, but there are a number of sections that are written in Aramaic, and the New Testament is written in Greek. So translations strive to communicate in English what was originally written in these other languages. And if you've ever studied the language, you know that going from one language to another is really tricky because different people think differently and they express the same concepts in different ways, and there isn't always an easy way to accomplish that, which leads us to our second observation about translations, and that is that translations make interpretive decisions for you. Okay, so when we study the Bible, we try to understand it, and trying to understand the Bible is what we call interpreting the Bible. We want to know what the individual passages mean for today, and that process is called interpreting the Bible. So it's just a nature of the fact is that when people translate the Bible, they have to make certain decisions for you. Okay, so they decide what certain words mean, certain phrases mean, and they put it into English. And often, if you know how languages work, there are multiple ways that you could say the same thing from one language to another. And so interpreters or translators make interpretive decisions for you. Unfortunately, different languages do not have a one-to-one comparison. So two languages may frequently do not have an equivalent word for the same thought. So like, for example, Some languages make a distinction between different shades of color, right? Like what we might call light blue or dark blue, and we could just say the word blue, and that wouldn't be a problem. Other languages have specific words for the different shades of blue, and they don't have one all-encompassing color for blue. And so you could see how that could be quite challenging for someone to interpret or to translate what you mean when you say the word blue. So when you communicate a message from one language to another, you will frequently need to decide how best to translate that message and what words get that message across. And this is what Bible translators do. They try to get the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek into English or Spanish or whatever language they're translating into. So just remember that every translation of the Bible has already made some interpretive decisions for you. Okay, and leads us to a third observation that's really important about translations. And that is that translations can take either a word-for-word approach or an idea-for-idea approach. A word-for-word approach tries to translate every Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek word with the closest equivalent English word, right? So these translations try to make as few interpretive decisions as possible for you, right? And so if the word is red here, they're going to try to translate that as red every single time. And so those are really good. You can think of the NRSV as a type of translation like this. They want to reflect the wording of the Bible as best as they can. The second idea or second approach to translations is called an idea-for-idea translation. It tries to communicate the intent of the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek words. And so this means that sometimes they'll convert ancient metaphors into modern metaphors that are more understandable. And so consequently, these translations make more interpretive decisions for you. They want to reflect the message intended in the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek. And these are good as well. And you could think of the New Living Translation as a translation that does something like this. So, in conclusion, just next time you sit down to study the Bible or read it, remember that you're reading a translation, right? You are reading a translation of the original languages. And second, every translation makes interpretive decisions for you. And then finally, your translation is either trying to communicate the original words or the original intent. And so it's really helpful to remember those things. If you can keep this in mind, it will help you study the Bible better. It will challenge you to read the Bible in multiple translations so that you can consider how you might better understand what God's Word means. So if you liked this Bible study tip, make sure that you hit the subscribe button or that you share it with someone who you think might benefit from it. Okay, talk to you next time.